All right, everybody, here we go. Welcome back to Stocks by the Numbers. And we have an update here for STEM Incorporated, symbol STEM, listed here on the New York. This was a stock that was dropping down. We hit lows of about 30 cents and change. And a lot of people were, I know there was some potential news about some board shakeups and whatnot that people were looking forward to. We've mentioned maybe like, 1 or 2 quarters down the road, we might begin to turn it around. And here on the technical side, if you pull up something like FinViz, it's interesting because it shows a double bottom. Now, it wasn't a technically exact, precise, to the thousandth decimal place. It wasn't a perfect double bottom. But if traders out there played it that way and then kind of forced the pop, forced the potential short squeeze here in the short term, I can appreciate that. And obviously, you played it correctly and you're sitting here, you're up over 100%. So shout out to any of those traders who played it that way. But if we do, call it a double bottom here, if we come back, you can see they're talking about right here, September 26, 24, top left of the screen, the O, the H, the L, the C, that's the open, the high, the low, the close, right? You can see the low, 30.31 cents. And then if we fast forward to about a week ago, we can see low 30.29, right? So just almost exactly a double bottom. And then you have a little bit of a pop the next day. The next day, we go green, and you can see the slight retest. Look at the low, 30.49, right? So technically tried to come back down to that bottom, but made a higher low. And then we have a big rise yesterday, and then an even larger explosion today. Right? So technically, aside from that potential double bottom and this pop, and I understand the potential short squeeze, there really isn't much news on STEM right now. And even here, looking at TradingView, we can see the last news came out was, a little ratings change. That was about a month ago. And if we switch over to FinViz here, I know they talk about Tesla deliveries. But again, that was several days ago. That was before the breakup. And the short float right now, according to FinViz, is a little over 23%. But with the stock running and the volume really going through the roof, even after hours, we can see, look at that big jump there in the volume. Let's see what we're looking at there. Wait, where are my numbers? Was that 120,000 shares roughly? And the stock runs up. Let's get your price. Stock runs up to 88.89 cents. And we can see that just yesterday, after the open, the stock was at 31 and change, 32 cents, right? So we ran up, we basically stayed above the 20-day moving average, holding strong, going into yesterday's close, roughly about 41.5 cents, continues after hours, stays above the 50-day moving average. And you can see, look at the open, almost pops right to our trend line there, has a big rejection, drops below the 20-day moving average. Then about 20 after 10, it decides, you know what, it's time to go back up. Gets back above the moving average, multiple retests, but stays above it. And then look at this run here, closing at almost 60 cents today. And then continuing after hours again, almost hitting about 89 cents. And if we back up, we can see that's pretty darn close to this potential gap fill that we were talking about kind of over the last couple of months in my eyes, but it just never came to fruition because it wasn't in a situation, it wasn't in a state, in my opinion, to where it could be forced to gap fill, right? We really weren't getting any positive updates. We weren't getting any news coming out of the company. And again, I know they did a little board shakeup and people are looking forward to that over the next couple of quarters. And it could be a nice turnaround story because every time we looked at STEM, see, they were failing to deliver on the EPS side, on the revenue side, but we were consistently being told about that growing backlog, right? And the backlog doubled that one quarter we looked at it, and it went from like 900 million to almost 2 billion. So I'm sitting here saying, yeah, you know what? Sometimes you got to weather the storm. The stock's getting beat up right now, but if they start chunking in that revenue and they start blowing earnings out of the water, all of a sudden the stock's going to run back up here. And everyone's going to say, oh, I wish I bought it as it was on the way down. I knew they were going to turn it around. So this was a pretty, speculative situation, so to speak, because technically the earnings weren't there. The earnings were mixed the whole time we were looking at it. And we were kind of just trying to time the big breakout on the earnings, right? But that just never took place. But, it also remains to be seen. Because as we said, now with them, getting some new people involved behind the scenes, maybe now over the next 1 to 2 quarters, it may have the turnaround story. But anyway, gap fill technically 91.22 cents. Look at that low right there. And the stock hit 88.89 cents, right? So did it come very close? Yes. Did it technically fill the gap? No, right? So we might stay up here. You can see it's holding about 70 cents after hours. So we might kind of hang out there and then maybe have another run up to try to fill that gap. Also, this top trend line, we can see, yeah, it's about 99 cents, right? So you might have the quick breakout back to above $1. And I really don't know how to interpret this because, again, on the technical side, I understand the argument. Well, there was, a double bottom and then boom, we popped it up and, it was Friday, we closed out the week, we forced the shorts to cover, boom, we're running now, big volume coming in. I can appreciate that, but also at the same time, this was the most volume the stock has seen in a day since it went public. Okay, look at the volume here. We're talking almost 48 million shares, average volume 7 million, right? So we're almost 7x, 7 times daily volume. But if you go back, I mean, even all these other days here, it never came close. Almost 35 million shares. I mean, look at this. If we back up, this is 33 million shares on that day. Even right out of the gate, touch below 35 million shares, right? And today, 48 million shares. So I hate to be, that rabbit hole guy, but also at the same time, we could potentially be seeing something kind of rumbling behind the scenes. And listen, that could be anything, right? That could be an announcement. Again, who knows? Who knows? But, this could be our Congress people piling into the stock because they're about to add it to a frickin' bill in a week or something, right? People could be speculating that, again, they may get good news. They may get orders coming in going into the new year. Trump may mention the company. I mean, it could be a number of things. And that's why I kind of hate to go down the rabbit hole, so I kind of just want to take it at face value of the potential double bottom and the bullish signal, and then, shorts covering, big volume coming in, and we'll potentially push it back up here, and then it'll quiet down again going into earnings. But also at the same time, when it comes to the market, you can't be too naive either, right? So to state the theory that someone may know something and big boys may be piling in, taking big positions here at this beaten up sub $1 level to potentially get the news of them being mentioned in a bill or them getting funding or Trump talking about them or, who knows, Tesla taps them for an order or does a collaborate, right? So we may potentially have one of those situations taking place. But in the immediate short term, I would say, again, little short squeeze, potential gap fill, and maybe just forcing it, trying to get it back to that $1 psychological level before it kind of hangs out and just kind of build up the support, build up the floor for it a little bit going into these earnings here, roughly about the third week of February. So we're going to you have to take it day by day with a situation like STEM because, again, technically earnings have been kind of rough and we're not really getting any updates on the company. So as of right now, that's all we can really go off of is a potential technical pattern and then a breakout here. According to FinViz, short float right now, a little over 23%. So again, with all of that volume coming in, who knows how much of that is now being covered. But if we, actually, let's see. Where's the float? 150 million shares. Roughly. And we had almost 50 million shares trade hands today. So roughly a third of the company traded hands today. So again, we could have seriously forced that squeeze. And any of you traders out there who caught it, again, hats off to you. Phenomenal play. Going from, 31, 35 cents, wherever you may have gotten in. Now that things, on its way back to $1 maybe over the next day or two. So hats off to you. Very well played. But, short float, we were talking about all of this every time we looked at STEM, but the company just wasn't delivering for us, right? And every earnings report, they would say, oh, listen, everything's going to be great. The backlog's growing, you stick with us. and we just constantly kept getting disappointed. Disappointment after disappointment. And it's just an unfortunate situation. And I understand the videos at the time when we first started talking about it, they were getting decent views. So I tried to do updates on it. And listen, I'm guilty of making a bad call myself, because I always said anytime I would generate a couple of bucks, from the channel, I would slowly move it over into my own account, and I would at least be transparent with you all, and I would have the integrity to actually put my money where my mouth is, right? And again, the whole crew in the Discord can attest to this. Discord free for you guys to join. Just request a link in the comments. But again, I make some good calls. I make some bad calls. But, I do always put my money where my mouth is. And anytime I move over a few bucks and I'm able to buy, a handful of shares or one or two call options, I always disclose what I'm doing. And something like STEM, I own this up here at like $2 a share. So, we're all guilty of making the bad calls. And again, STEM was more of a situation where, yeah, they're getting beaten up now, but in the long term with the backlog, if the revenue starts to chunk in and they start knocking earnings out of the water, the stock's going to explode. And then we're going to say, hey, good thing, we found it down here at these levels, right? So unfortunately, trying to time like when the storm would end and where the rebound and explosion would begin, as you can see, a prediction like that could turn out to hurt you in the long run. And again, a stock going from I own a handful of shares. Again, I think my cost is like 209, right? Stock went down to 30 cents. So, I'm in it with you. And it may not be much size, but as I said, I'm always transparent. I'm a very honest, upfront guy. And anytime I was able to move over a few bucks, I bought a handful of shares of a lot of the stocks we spoke about. I own a handful of shares of Honest, right? I kept updating you, said it was a good call here on the channel. And listen, I'm buying at a higher price, but I moved a few dollars over and I put my money where my mouth is. I own a handful of shares of Fubo. I own some SB, and I own STEM, so... I missed out on a lot of winners too. Soundhound, $2, $3. I never had cash. Now the stock's over 20. So imagine if when I started the channel, if I had a couple of 100,000 of liquidity, where I'd be now. And again, I'm not trying to, cry over spilled milk. I'm not trying to say, oh yeah, but I made some great calls on the channel. You guys know that already. But, point of the story is I'm putting my money where my mouth where my mouth is when I have it. And I'm not hiding from anybody. Even when the stock was getting tanked, I was still here answering your comments. I was here discussing what could potentially happen, what we have to maybe see over the next couple of quarters. I'm here doing an update. Obviously, I know the stock's moving, but you understand what I'm saying. But anyway, so we do have the potential gap fill and then the run back up to the $1 psychological level. Market cap again closed at about 100 million, but we're up 20% now after hours. So we're going to potentially run back maybe to I want to say, if we double it roughly, we're talking about $1.20, which would be a breakout above this top line resistance. But at the same time, that would bring the market cap to like, 160 million, we can call it, if it's not going to be a clean double. 160, 170 million. And that was another thing, because in the numbers, technically, the situation got worse as well, right? So even over the last couple of weeks, as I was slowly bringing a few dollars over, I took, as I said, I bought a handful of shares of Honest. I bought some shares of SB, but I didn't add to my position in STEM because it didn't seem like it was worth it, right? Again, I understand the technical squeeze here in the short term, but the debt technically, above 600 million and pulled back as of last quarter to sub 600 million. Free cash flow about minus 9.5 million. This time last year, it was about half of that loss, right? So we doubled that negative cash flow, and the cash was up to above 100 million. Now we're down here at about 75 million in cash. We're slightly outweighing liabilities in the short term, but we're doubly outweighed in the long term by our liabilities. If we pull up our balance sheet, we can see our equity went bigly negative on the 50% drop, roughly, even more, in asset value, while liabilities basically stayed the same here, close to 900 million. Now we're sitting here with negative total equity. We're sitting here now with a negative book value, right? So that's why, in my opinion, until they actually announce something good, or they actually beat earnings and they righted the wrongs and got the ship back on track, I personally wasn't going to add to the position. So I know a lot of people mentioned in the Discord, like, oh, it was at 30 cents. I knew something was cooking. I should have bought. Like, don't do that to yourself, right? That's all hindsight. So you're better off just letting it run on the technical move, let it pull back and calm down. And again, if they happen to come out with a good quarter and boom, then you can potentially add to the position and try to average down a little bit. Because here, before these moves happened, again, a lot of people would have made the argument that you're, just adding more and jumping more on board to a sinking ship. And now that it started to pop in the last couple of days, now everyone in the hindsight, oh, I knew I should have bought more at 30, now it's at 80. Like, again, don't do it to yourself. Don't do it to yourself, because technically in the numbers, as we said on the balance sheet, in the actual earnings of the business themselves, it's been pretty freaking dismal. So, you can't beat yourself up for something like that. But again, yeah, 23% short float. We'll see how that changes. We look here on stock charts and we can see MACD was really relatively flat. Looked like we were potentially going to cross back to the downside, but now we kind of bounced off it. That's on the weekly. Top Bollinger Band, 68 cents. And what did we say, right? If we double up to 120, roughly 200 million market cap, and we can see the moving average 50-day on the weekly is 1.25. And we didn't retest that since the very beginning of 2023, with the stock back up here at like $8-9. So this could potentially be the turning point, but again, we're going to need that added positive catalyst to help push us through that break point and just reverse the whole situation. So again, I'm not honestly quite sure yet if it's from the technical double bottom and the potential, immediate short squeeze, or if it's from someone behind the scenes, maybe knowing something is coming. So big boys are piling in, and then we're going to get news of, again, it got, funding from a bill, or someone's about to give them an order, or who knows, there might be rumblings of a buyout. I don't know. I don't know yet. So right now we have to play it off just the technical side. But if we do hear a big announcement, it wouldn't shock me. We can see again, we have the gap fill here at about 91.2 cents. And we're basically would be meeting up with our 200-day moving average of about 95 cents. So gap fill at 91, 200-day at 95, and then of course we're going to have that psychological level at around $1. So we may see the squeeze back up to $1 here. And, again, they may be forcing the shorts to cover and getting back to that dollar level to potentially regain compliance with the New York. And that's why, again, as the stock started to approach the low $1 and then broke, I mentioned that over the next couple of quarters, if they're not able to turn this around organically, then we may potentially see that reverse stock split, which we know is usually not very good. But, yeah, MACD technically crossed back to the upside there after we bounced and had that big run up back to the moving average. And then today we have another big surge. RSI a little overextended here at 74. But again, if we have a short squeeze with the gap fill, double bottom force, if all the technicals are lining up, then we may continue to pump up. And we can get that RSI to, 84 and pop that sucker back up to around $1. And then maybe have, that small rejection and readjust from there. Let's check the pivot points real quick. I'll let you go. As we see here, we're looking at the daily. We had a top level resistance at 56 cents. Stock closed during regular market hours at 59 cents. So that technically is still bullish. Looks like we have a old resistance level right there at about 69.70 cents. This one's up here at about 80.81. This one looks like about 76. And where is this? This is, yeah, this looks like about like 97 cents maybe, right in that range. So again, potential gap fill, 91 cents and change. We have old resistance levels at, 96 cents and change. We have the 200-day moving average, 95 cents and change. We have the psychological level, $1. to potentially get back to. So that might be where it goes in the immediate short term. And then if we don't hear anything, then it should technically reject off that level and just kind of slowly start kind of dwindle, and not, like slightly dropping, not necessarily tanking, but it might just kind of drop down and hold going into that earnings, and then we see if we can force a pop back above. But only time will tell. I mean, if you have any theories, if you heard any rumblings, if if there was an article or an update that I'm just not seeing here, let us know in the comments section. Of course, I always say that. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I'm seeing with STEM. But again, this is really big volume. We're talking over 48 million shares. And if we go back to the big days that the stock has had in the past, we're only looking at about 35 million shares about in a day. And we can see we're up to over 48 million shares. So if this is a short squeeze, I mean, it's quite an impressive one. But also at the same time, I have a feeling like, someone may know something, and we may get a big update coming soon. I don't know. So let me know down in the comments section if you think it's from the technicals, if you think something is coming out, or as I said, if news came out that I'm not aware of, let everyone know down in the comments section. But that's pretty much everything that I'm personally seeing here with STEM. And obviously, as news comes out, if we do get any updates about anything coming, then we'll jump on and we'll do a quick update video for you. But that's pretty much it, so I'll end it there. Once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually pretty quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But of course, more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they are volatile, and they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your weekend.